Oh, yes, indeedy, quite literally doody. Your Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes, continues with welcoming to the Good Listening To clearing for her good listening to Kirsty Cox, who is a wonderful human being and a delightful actress. So even so awesome, in fact, that Sam Marlowe from the Times said Kirsty Cox is mesmeric. So we're very, very happy to have you here for your time bathing in the sunlight in the Good Listening To clearing. So Kirsty Cox, welcome.
Hello. I'm very delighted to be here. I've just put you on speaker mode, so I don't have to look at myself so much, which was a good move, I think.
You're a Samurai Zoom user. You've hidden your own self-view. I like that. Not many people know you can do that. That's good.
Oh,
So I'm delighted to have you here, and I'm going to bounce you along the Good Listening To and Your Life and Times Chris Grimes construct, which is lovely storytelling metaphors. There is a clearing, a tree. We're going to shake your tree to see how we like those storytelling apples that fall out. There's some alchemy, some gold, a cheeky bit of Shakespeare, and a cake. So it's quite literally all to play for, Kirsty Cox.
I am delighted and very excited and honoured to be here, I must say, in such esteemed company, having looked at who else you've spoken to. I feel very
If I
delighted.
may say, pish and tush, madam. It's honestly the lovely dynamic I've got is that people are generically, I'm not calling you generic at all, but everything guests have in common is they're creative individuals with an interesting story to tell. And I think you are an absolute delight. You are an instant wit with me. We're on stage a lot together, and you're always such a reassuring presence because you're always, in the spirit of yes and, incredibly positive, clear, totally uncomplicated in your ability to just turn up and just give an amazing performance.
Thank you.
And it goes way beyond just instant wit, because I've seen you recently. The most recent thing I saw you doing in Bath was you were playing Artemis Arine,
Yes.
which was, I think I've pronounced that correctly, which is your very wonderful version of Hercule Poirot.
Yes, a female Belgian detective. Yeah, it was Crimes on the Nile with lovely company, new old friends, who I'm going to be working with again very soon. Delighted to be hopefully getting back on stage in the not too distant future. So
yes, and of course you've got lovely dulcet tones of being Scottish as well. And I know that we can talk and riff about this as well. I wonder where your clearing is going to be actually, because I know that it doesn't have to be this, but I know romantically in my own head you've got the Isle of Arran and a converted barn somewhere up in the north somewhere. So who knows whether that'll be your clearing. But I'm hearing gannets, I'm hearing cormorants, I'm just hearing seascapes. Lovely.
Indeed.
So first question, which may be a slight surprise, but how's morale? What's your story of the day? Kirsty Cox, actress and lovely human being.
What's my story of the day? I feel like the last few weeks, life, more like a sort of normal life, has started to come back. And that's very wonderful, like being on stage with your good self at the weekend, instant witting for the first time in person in probably about 18 months. And also starting to look forward to hopefully rehearsal starting again with new old friends soon. But also sort of heading back into the world of freelancing and juggling, and actually that's tiring. There's a little bit of it. So morale is good in that I'm going, great, things are happening, but I'm also going, how did I used to do this? You know, the sort of keeping all the balls in the air. And I feel like at the moment I'm doing a lot of, nearly missed that one. Oh no, and I think I've generally managed to keep the balls in the air, but some of them are very near the floor before I pick them up again, if you see what I mean. So it's kind of, I'm trying to find my way back into it and being quite, I don't know, surprised at how challenging I'm finding that. Yeah.
And by the way, I'm all about the metaphor. I'm loving the metaphorical juggling that you use beautifully there, because life is indeed a wicked mess and it's complicated. And I've heard psychologists tell us that during this period, we've actually been starved of what are called third place encounters. You know, work and home have become very inexorably intertwangled. And then we've been starved of just those spontaneous chance encounters out in the big wide world. And that's what's difficult to get back into, because it's quite a big ask of us emotionally and mentally to get back into being a sort of public persona again.
Yeah, and indeed, that's the other thing I'm finding is that sort of meeting up again with people socially, or actually, you know, being back in a room with people working and going, how do I make conversation? How does that, oh, you know, that's
Yes.
all of these things that, yeah, you just, yeah, the way, but overall, yes, morale is good. Just finding my way back into sort of how life used to be, and going, this used to feel really easy, and now it's sort of, yeah, it's tiring, but it's good.
And on Saturday night, when we were doing Instant Wit at the Alma Tavern, we had a quick conversation that I banked for today, where we were talking about how, you know, the nature of confidence, it can ebb and flow, and how we all perceive each other as being like majestic swans when it's time to be on stage again together. But we all know that underneath the surface, we could all be feeling a sort of frisson of adrenaline, nervousness as our confidence has ebbed and flowed, particularly over the last 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have definitely felt over the last sort of 18 months that I've had periods of time where my confidence has been really low, because I'm not, because I mainly, as will come up, I'm sure, during all this, but I mainly work in theatre. So, and that's an industry that's been sort of stopped completely and then decimated, and now is trying to rebuild, and suddenly not being able to do your job, or trying to move it online, or into different sort of recording, sort of different ways of working. And that's been great in some ways, but also hard, because you're going, this is I'm not getting to do what is my normal job, and my
Yes.
confidence is, yeah, so it's been a real challenge, but it's sort of feeling like gradually that those confidence levels are coming back. Now I'm getting back into the realm of work where I normally feel confident and happy, and
Yes.
yeah, and yeah, the sort of the moments of adrenaline, like on Saturday night, of going, okay, I have the confidence that we can do this, but my adrenaline is going, oh, but that's a good
Yes.
thing. That's sort of, as I like to put it, I always worry if I'm in the wings, or, you know, backstage before a show, and I don't get that sicky feeling. I need a sicky feeling for me to go
Yes.
to get on there, and that's a good kind of, oh, can I do this, rather than over the last year or so there have been times I've gone, can I do this, you know. And
Yes.
I think that's the
That's
slight.
very relatable, by the way. I think of the adage, adrenaline is my friend. And that's where your sicky feeling, it's about taming the beast of your adrenaline, but knowing that it's there to help you
Yeah,
chemically.
exactly,
Also,
exactly.
really played your part in being really flexible and adaptive during this period. I've seen you do lovely stuff online as well. Also, you're a street performer as well, and you're very, very versatile in the stuff that you do. You've been at Ashton Court in Bristol, playing out the Smythes or the Smiths. In fact,
The
it is
Smiths,
Smiths.
it is the Smiths, yes.
Yes,
For anyone else who's listening to this who is from Bristol, they are the Smiths, not the Smythes. So
quite right too. And just tell us about that show that you've been doing very recently.
So that was, yeah, a couple of weekends ago now at Ashton Court with Show of Strength Theatre Company, and we were just telling stories from the lives of the people who used to live in Ashton Court Mansion. So I got to play the rather glorious Emily Smith, who, you know, is quite a fascinating woman, and her husband, her second husband, Greville, of Greville Smith Park, for anyone again
Ah,
who's Bristol-based. It was a second marriage for her, and they were first cousins, and they spent basically all the money that Ashton Court, the sort of family had, by doing things like Emily insisted that when they went off on holiday, that they traveled the world, but that she would take a cow on the train to the south of France, in its own carriage, so that she could have fresh milk in her tea every morning.
just
Um,
run us past that again. She took her. That's a right. It's called a rider, isn't it? When someone's got
yeah,
some really. So the rider was, I need a cow to come
I
with
need a
me.
cow to come with me to the south of France on a train, so that I can have fresh milk in my tea every morning. So there you are.
We've all done it. Not. I love that. So one other thing before I get you into the clearing, by the way, I was very excited from a comic point of view to talk to you, because you're the only person ever to come on to the program who has had a review in Sardines magazine.
Ah!
I looked at your website and I was thinking, talk me through what it's like to be reviewed by the readership of Sardines magazine, and what is that about, please?
Now I'm going to say I don't know. Isn't that terrible? Yes. I don't think I'm presuming that it was some sort of online publication.
It was very kind. It said you're a perfect choice for June, and obviously the comedian in me was thinking, and for July, and the rest of the year. But you're obviously taking upon you a character called June, and also Forgive me, just while I'm blowing some smoke at you, this is for Steph and I, who run Instant Wit together. But one of your reviews said that you bring your character, you bring out her enthusiasm and her frustration with her older colleagues. And that made me laugh, because that could be about me and Steph in Instant Wit.
I'm not at all. I'm in awe of you and Steph every time I get on stage with you both and think, how am I supposed to do what they do? Look at them just improvising, and my brain is going, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? So yes, I'm in awe.
But right back at you. And that was just a brief sort of, drift into having looked at your Kirsty Cox website, which you can tell us more about towards the end, I promise. Also, in Googling you, you come up first as being this sort of illustrious actress that you are. And in fact, the second link is somebody called Kirsty Cox, who is a bluegrass musician.
Oh, I wondered if you were going to talk about, for a while, if you Googled me, you'd come up with some woman called Kirsty Cox who got taken to court for stealing iPads or something. Anyway, yeah.
But that wasn't you, just to be clear.
It wasn't me, just so you know.
So we have arrived at the delicious point. Thank you for that, bearing with me as I did that quite long introduction, but it was just to really let you know that you're most welcome. I'm really excited to welcome you to the clearing. So what is a clearing like for you as we get going on the construct here? Where does Kirsty Cox go to get clutter-free, inspirational and able to think?
Well, interestingly, from what we slightly discussed in the introduction, and from what you can probably see on my wall behind me, is I love to get to the sea, and there is something about that and that space and looking out at a horizon, preferably with nothing on it, just kind of looking out across. And I suppose part of that comes from where my family is from, up in on the west coast of Scotland. And then when you look out from the west coast, you often don't see anything on the horizon because it's next stop America, and it's sort of that big open stretches of water. I find incredibly, I know this probably comes later, but inspirational, but also a place to really think. And again, I can be anywhere. Like I could, later today I'm going to meet a friend in Clevedon, and that's lovely, and I just get down to that. So water in general is good for me, but the more open the water, so the sea, and the less cluttered the horizon and the less busy the beach, the better. So ideally it would be a very remote Scottish island on the west coast, but I can do it. I can do it on Bournemouth Beach. I can, it's sort of, but that sort of being able to look out over water is really important to me.
I love that adage, next stop America. That's a really lovely way to put it, because that is about the vastness.
Yeah.
And is the sea that you like to look at calm, or do you like it to be tempestuous? I'm thinking about seafaring now. I
love either. I think I love to watch it change. So where my family are up on Arran, we have this, you can look out over the sea, and sometimes you can see other land there because of where we are near the Mull of Kintyre and Ailsa Craig, and other times the weather comes in and you can't see anything and you just see sea, and I love the changing nature of it. And I know some people don't like that, but I love to feel the power of the sea. I think I find that incredibly just again it helps me to think in different ways. And I think it is, I love to be on the sea or in the water, so anything sort of surrounding water, and I just I find it hard to put into words, but it's something that just really grounds me and makes me feel like I can breathe properly.
So I'm loving expansive thinking and next stop America, in the idea of a vast seascape. I deliberately glided on my vowel there, a vast seascape. Marvellous. So I'm going to arrive now, if I may, at your clearing. And sorry to interrupt your clearing, because it sounds like you want to be on your own looking at it. And you also said Mull of Kintyre, so I wondered if sometimes you can see Paul McCartney just off the coast.
Well, as a little aside to that, my one of my second, third cousins, I can never remember how you work all that out, or first cousin once removed, or whatever it is, played the bagpipes. He was part of the pipe band on the Mull of Kintyre.
Oh, get quite literally in. That's a claim to fame right there. Love that. So I'm going to arrive at a tree, and there could be some bagpipes in the tree. We shall find out. So the tree is going to arrive at your clearing, and this is where we're going to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Where Kirsty Cox, a lovely actress, you've had 5 minutes to have thought about 4 things that have shaped you, 3 things that inspire you, 2 things that never fail to grab your attention, and borrowed from the film Up, that's the "hot squirrels" moment, where whatever distracts you in the moment, there it is. And then 1 quirky or unusual fact about you, Kirsty Cox, we couldn't know until you tell us. So don't panic, Mrs. Mainwaring. You don't have to shake the tree in a wanna, but it's over to you to crunch those apples with a deliberate invitation to go as deep wherever you like. And we'll just have a lovely conversation as we shake your tree. Next stop, America, in the vast seascape near the Mull of Kintyre.
Wonderful. I've got this image of this floating tree somehow. Anyway, it's nice. So yes, I find this exercise, it was really great to do, but very hard, some of them, to pin things down, or kind of making connections in my head and then going, oh, that's sort of the same thing, but different. Anyway, 4 things that have shaped me. I think, thinking about it, a thing that really shaped me was I was born, although I grew up mainly in Edinburgh, I was born near Twickenham, and lived the first 7 years of my life down there in the south of England. And then we moved to Edinburgh when I was 7 and a half. And that was a huge thing, looking back, a massive shift geographically, and for my parents to do with the work that they were doing. And as a sort of child, which seems hard to imagine now, but there is a tape of me talking, sounding quite London, and when I was sort of 5, that I had to do for school, and sort of moving up as this quite English little girl to Edinburgh, not knowing anybody, you know, and how that sort of changed my life, in that Scotland became a massive sort of, yeah, I would still now, it's debatable, you know, because I've lived away from Scotland for a long time now, but it still feels like home to me. And that's partly that my mum's family, as I'll come on to in a bit, comes from the Isle of Arran. So, but it also comes from the fact that, yeah, I did all my schooling and things in Edinburgh, and studied at drama school in Glasgow. And moving to Edinburgh meant that we spent, you know, lots of time on Arran, and a real shift. And when I think back to what life would have been like if we'd stayed in Twickenham, it would have been very different, you know, in a kind of what was or is now really, you know, a London suburb, you know. It's, and
Yes.
Yeah, the difference in what my life would have been is,
Yes.
it's quite a shift. Yeah.
And is that almost the era of almost first memories? You talked about being 5 at school, but 7, I mean, in life, apparently we should be very attuned to 7-year cycles, because we're cellularly regenerated, but we're the same person. You know, your teeth are the same, but you've sort of, so 7 years are a really interesting marker. So it's quite interesting that I know it wasn't your first memory, but that sounded like a pretty iconic moment when you went back to Scotland.
Yeah, I think it was. And I do, yeah, I have memories, obviously, of being down in London. I have memories of my parents telling me that we were going to move, and me being very unhappy about it. And then early memories of being in Edinburgh at first, and it not always being easy as the kind of English child in Scotland, you know, kind of, and then sort of that adjusting, and but overall now still feeling that there's always a moment for me still when I go back over the border, and I kind of go, oh, and I can, and it's not to do with not feeling at home here in Bristol. It's again comes back, I think, for me, to space and seeing hills, and you know, the hills you have down here aren't really hills, you know, they're kind of quite,
they're not really hills.
and there's a moment for me, I get to the Lake District and I start to go, okay, and then you get further north, and yeah, and I sort of think it's interesting whether we'd stayed in London, whether I'd have felt those things or not. So yeah,
There's a bit of a roaming in the gloaming. There's something that's bringing you back. So there's a DNA factory default setting to your Scottishness.
Yeah,
I'm hearing in that. Lovely. So back to you.
Yeah, so I suppose connected to that, and it's a sort of follow on. But I'd say something that's really shaped me is the kind of the nomadic nature of my family. In that, and then the thing that is constant. So my parents both moved away from where they grew up. Their parents all moved away from where they grew up. So my family is really spread out, and I find that really interesting when I compare it to people who have lived for generations in one place. And I think I find it really has shaped me, because I do have a feeling of where I live is home. But as I said, there's still a sort of pull towards Scotland, and but that I feel very I feel very sort of often content where I am, I suppose, and also I sort of feel like it helps me when I'm touring as a performer and things, because I just am quite used to moving around and traveling long distances to see family, and it not being a big thing. And I enjoy all of those different cultural influences in my family from different parts of the country. I mean, it's sort of, you know, I've got family in Northern Ireland and in England and Scotland, and just all of that. I just find that has really shaped me. And interestingly, the other thing being that because my family has all moved around all over the place, and I've obviously moved a lot, is the one constant in my life, which is the Isle of Arran, and that as a place has really shaped me. And it's just it's my place that I go to escape, but it's also a place where I feel at home, and I refer to it as home, but I've never actually lived there. I've only gone for long holidays and things, but there's something I don't know, it's the difference between the fact that my family is very nomadic, but the flip side being that on Arran I can go and look at the house that my great grandfather built. He dressed the stone and built it, you know, and it's not it makes it sound very grand, it's just a little house, but there's something very grounding about that, of going, my family all move around, but this place is part of my sort of my world and my family. And
so
yeah,
there's a lovely anchorage, an anchor point, and we've used quite a lot of seafaring analogies, but I love the fact that in all of your nomadicness and ability to be really, really adaptive, you've got a real strong anchor point. And I love the fact that it goes back to your father's anchor point of almost the foundation stones of Arran. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that feels really important to me. So yeah, it's that sort of difference, between the nomadic bit and then also liking the fact that there is somewhere that is very grounded for my family. So,
And do you have an Arran jumper, please? Just while I'm riffing on Arran.
well, there's a whole thing about that, Mr. Grimes. The Arran jumper actually comes from the Arran Isles.
Oh,
The Isle of Arran in Scotland doesn't do jumpers. Well, it does do jumpers, but not Arran jumpers.
Thank you for clarifying. That's really good to know.
People who will come to the Isle of Arran and ask about Arran jumpers. But the other clue is that the Isle of Arran in Scotland is spelt with 2 R's, and the Arran Isles are spelt with 1. And the Arran jumper is spelt with 1 R. So there you go.
For an extra million points, no cash attached, what's the geographical distance between the 2 Arrans you've described?
Oh, I'm not good on distances. Probably about 100 miles, maybe.
Yes, I didn't know the answer either. So that was an extra test, which you didn't. That's fine. So sorry, back to you and your shapeage.
My shapeage. So I'd say the next thing, funnily sort of going slightly chronologically, the next thing I would say would probably be when I sort of discovered drama and performing arts. This was after we'd moved to Edinburgh. I wasn't somebody, you sometimes meet actors who go, ever since I was 3, I wanted to perform. And I was not that at all. I wanted to be a vet, I think. And I also, the first thing I ever wanted to do was I wanted to be there was a TV program called Pigeon Street. and there was a long distance lorry driver in it called Long Distance Clara, and she sort of went over hills like this. It was a little animation thing, and she had a little song that went Long Distance Clara like this, and I thought she was the best thing, and I really wanted to be Long Distance Clara. And then after that I wanted to be a vet, and so performing and kind of things didn't really feature. And
That's such a lovely thing for you to sort of, again, another anchor point for you to be Kirsty Cox, long distance Clara. I hadn't heard of that. Is that Pigeon Street, you said?
Pigeon Street, yeah, it was a little sort of animation-y thing. Yeah, must have been in the early 80s, I'd have thought. Yeah, and it's funny because nowadays I often think about, I got to sort of be long distance Clara when I'm going touring, because I get to drive a van and drive all over the country, so it's still sort of there. But yeah, I sort of hadn't really thought in any way about sort of performing stuff. And then when we moved to Scotland, I remember I saw a poster up in the local newsagent at the top of our road, and it was for jazz dance classes. And a friend and I decided we'd go along. And actually, and I enjoyed it, and I kind of kept going. And then the same teacher said she was going to start up some drama classes, and it wasn't something I'd ever thought about doing. But because I was enjoying the sort of dance stuff, I thought, okay, so trundled along, and then sort of just kept going. And then the sort of belief in that particular teacher, and in kind of going, oh, I really enjoy this, and still not thinking about doing it as a career. But she also, this particular teacher, it was all extracurricular. And
do you remember her name as well?
Lynn Barber, yes. And she also did a lot of work in the community using drama. So I started kind of helping out at various groups that she ran. And then when the sort of the Eastern Bloc sort of started opening up more, and there was all the things that I'm sure people will remember of the sort of news programs and articles all about when the Romanian orphanages and things were discovered, and all of that, not discovered, but the sort of the conditions that some children were having to live in. And she went out and did sort of arts therapies and workshops in Romania and Albania and Slovakia and Bulgaria and all of them. And she formed a particular relationship with one institution in Slovakia. And I, aged 15, went out and started volunteering there in my summer holidays, and then did some volunteering with the Red Cross out there. And it really shaped me, because at that point then I was like, I want to do drama therapy. I think I want to use drama in the community. And it was hugely, hugely emotional and very wonderful at times thing to do. And I kind of look back and go, I did it like between when I was 15 and 17, and I kind of look back and think, gosh, how did I? Nowadays I kind of think, oh, I was really young. I just kind of got on with it.
Brave as well. And
Yeah.
is she still out there, Lynn Barber?
Well, she is, I think. Unfortunately, over the years, I've lost touch with her. So, Lynn, if you're out there and you listen to this, I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, she. I'm not sure where she is now, or what she's doing, but she was a hugely influential sort of figure in that sort of, in my sort of early teens to kind of until I left home age 17,
Yeah.
And gave me a huge amount of experience, and and kind of just introduced me to things I didn't know, and really
Open doors that have never shut since. And
exactly.
I'm always really struck with the profound nature of us not truly appreciating the impact we're having. And here we are a lifetime later, remembering those formative years of the nudge to confidence that Lynn Barber did by opening the door from the dance class to the drama class, to then opening up the world and going to Romania as well. I sincerely hope you can find a way to reconnect. That's lovely.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and then my last
Shapeage that we're on to.
Me is sort of following on from that I left home aged 17, and my parents still joke about this, that I couldn't do drama at school, and by this point I decided that's what I wanted to do. And in Scotland, we do different exams. So you do hires at age 17, and then you've kind of got in the bank, hopefully, your grades for university and things. And then, but you have another year where you can resit hires if you've failed them or need to get other ones, or you can do exams that we used to be able to do exams that were harder than A levels, you know, all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I basically decided that I was just going to leave after my hires, which was not really the done thing at my school. And I presented my parents with this leaflet that I picked up. I just realized the link there. I saw this poster all those years ago in the newsagents, and then I picked up this leaflet. We'd gone on, like a couple of years before, we'd gone to visit my dad's family in the Midlands, and we'd gone to Stratford-upon-Avon, and I picked up this leaflet about this course in Stratford-upon-Avon, and I must have hoarded it, and I don't remember doing this at all, but my parents still talk about me sort of going, I want to do this, and sort of handing them this leaflet, which was about, it was a year out course between school and university, and it was called the Post-18 Year Out Drama Course, and it was in Stratford-upon-Avon. And I think me being this kind of, in some ways, quite naive sort of teenager in Edinburgh, thought, well, Stratford-upon-Avon, you know, that's the place to go to learn about drama, because that's where Shakespeare's from, you know. And also I just wasn't getting, I couldn't study drama at school. There was no, it was a very academic school and really grounded me very well in academia and all those sorts of things, but I wasn't getting the opportunities I wanted. And my parents were incredibly understanding and sort of went, okay. And I went off and I had an interview, and I was a year too young because it was supposed to be post-18, but I was 17, but I got a place and off I went. Looking back, just trundled off to live on my own down in Stratford-upon-Avon age 17. And my parents sort of went, okay. And it was the most, I still think it was probably one of the biggest turning points in my life. That year I spent, there were 11 of us on the course. I'm still very close friends with several of them, you know, best friends for life, and living on my own for the first time, being in Stratford-upon-Avon, and again, a hugely influential teacher, and Deborah Moody, who I am still in touch with and who is glorious and has, yeah, I think influenced most people who have ever come in her sort of sphere. And she was the first sort of one who sort of, I suppose up to that point, I thought maybe I'd study drama at university, or I would, I said I was kind of thinking maybe I wanted to do drama in the community, or, you know, and actually I still do a lot of that sort of work alongside performing. But she was probably the first one who went, you should apply to drama school, go on, you know, and with her guidance and support, and yeah, I got into Royal Scottish Academy, and off I trundled the next year. But if I hadn't gone to Stratford, I don't think that would have happened, if I hadn't met her and had that support.
And just say Miss Moody's name again. What was her name?
Deborah Moody.
Deborah Moody. Lovely. Just great. You've met these really profound individuals that have nudged you along the right path. Was it connected to the Royal Shakespeare Company being in Stratford, or just slightly different?
Well, it was, we were at the FE College, Stratford-upon-Avon College, but we had the most amazing tutors, including Gordon Valens, who had been based at Belgrade and Coventry, who basically started up theatre and education and things. So it was kind of this huge, this amazing network of people. So although we didn't do things directly with the Royal Shakespeare Company, we were, because of being in Stratford, we were able to get a lot of the practitioners in who were working at the Royal Shakespeare Company to work with us. And yeah, I mean, it was just glorious, you know, and we were kind of doing, we did a crash A-level in the year of the theatre studies A-level, but then in between, you know, Debbie would have us, we'd do like mask making and go and sing like medieval Christmas carols at you know, stage door, and you know, met Josie Lawrence, and you know, all these sorts of crazy things. You look back and you go, wow, that was just amazing, but we just took it all in our stride. And then yeah, it was brilliant, really brilliant.
There's something lovely about the confidence of youth, because sometimes it can just be anything's possible, yes, 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 and, which now segues beautifully into your love of comedy improvisation, and yes, and just saying yes more, because doors open if you say yes more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So wonderful shapeage. Now we're still in the canopy of your tree. 3 things that have inspired you, please. And if there's any overlap, don't worry about that. Off you go.
So there probably is quite a lot of overlap, I would say. So 3 things that inspire me, and uh, I think the first one would be nature does, and I've already spoken about my love of the sea and hills, but being out in nature, seeing growth of things, seeing, especially over the last year, it's been a real sort of kind of counting blessings to be able to be near to nature and kind of see things, and just those wonderful moments of I was in Pembrokeshire last weekend before last, and suddenly saw dolphins, and all of those sorts of things where you just, those sort of glorious moments of just, and I've been lucky enough up in Scotland to swim with seals, and just kind of those moments of, for want of a better word, kind of communing with nature and being there and being inspired by it, I find really glorious. And I expect a lot of other people do as well. And I think then another thing that's inspired me, and I've sort of spoken a bit about them as well, but it's my parents and my wider family and friends network. I'm truly lucky to have amazing people in my life, from family and my parents, to friends, like the friends I made in Stratford-upon-Avon all those years ago, my school friends. I really, I don't know, it's partly, maybe some people say I'm an only child, and whether that means I hold on to friends more tightly, I'm not sure, but I sort of see my friends as part of my family as well, because
Lovely.
My parents and I are a small little family, so it's and of particular people in my family, as well as my parents. I was incredibly inspired by my great aunt, who was a painter, and she's sadly no longer with us, but she was formidable. She did this sort of 90th birthday exhibition, and at it informed me she was going to take a gap year because she hadn't done that yet, and that's sort of, and just she was sort of prolific and just wonderful woman, and went off to the Arctic Circle and to Thailand and everything, all in her kind of later years, and often said her life kind of began in her 50s, and that was it. And so she was incredibly inspirational as well.
And although you said you were an only child, what I'm hearing is a sort of fierce independence, but the joy of knowing where your anchor points are through your friendship groups. So there's a lot of space and oxygen and sort of next stop America in there. There's space and expanse. There was nothing needy about I'm an only child and I hold on to my friends. I don't get that at all. I think your friends are lucky to be perceived by you as your anchors, I think.
Oh, that's very lovely to say. But I feel incredibly lucky to have so many wonderful people in my life. I really do. It's
And there's something lovely about the nature of reciprocity there in life. What you give out, you'll get back. And a golden thread of independence, but knowing where your anchor points are.
I think sometimes I think I can be told I'm a bit too independent. Sometimes I just kind of try and forge on with things myself. But then I always know that there's people there who've got my back if I need them, and I think that I feel incredibly lucky for that. So
I believe we're now on to 2 things that never fail to grab your attention.
I've got one more inspirational thing. Sorry, I friends and family.
No, go for it.
And the other thing, so the other thing that inspired me, and this is a sort of quick thing, but it is being in, when I've been lucky enough to be, or watching an incredible piece of theatre.
Oh, yes.
That inspires me. Those moments that I've had where I've sat in the audience and gone, I want to be up there and do that, and just kind of be in that space. And again, times when I've been in a production that I've just gone, I am inspired by all the people I'm working with right at this moment, and we are creating something that is phenomenal. I think that's just, so I suppose it's interesting, isn't it? I've got something from nature, something from my sort of family and friends, and then something from my work that all kind of inspire.
Lovely. And thank you for making sure that you got that in, because that was a beautiful segue. I think it is really important, that thing that it keeps a lot of actors going, isn't it? That pull towards that space, the energy of I need to do that, I need to storytell. I love that.
So what I'm on 2 things that grab my attention.
Never fail to grab your attention.
This is probably a slightly more quirky, I don't know. One thing that always will never fail to grab my attention, no matter what I'm doing, is if I see a reference to Peanuts, the comic strip. So I grew up with my dad loving Snoopy and Peanuts, and the first toy that I was given by my parents when I was a child was a cuddly Snoopy, and that it now is like old friends will know that if they can't think of anything else to get me, then to try and buy me something for my birthday that is Snoopy related, especially Snoopy, but I will do any Peanuts character, is a surefire win. And if I see something like a poster, or it is that squirrel moment of going, what's that? Oh, look, it's, I kind of, no matter what I'm doing, it will grab my attention.
Because we've got Linus with the blanket, we've got Charlie Brown, and what the woodcock is, what's the little bird?
The little
Woodstock.
Bird. Yes, yeah.
I used to have little bounce. That you used to get those wind up.
Yeah.
Hoppity, 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 hoppity. I used to have a little hoppy Snoopy and a hoppy, what's he called? Woodcock. Woodstock. Yeah, sorry, you just chimed some memories in my own heart there as well. Love that.
I think they're quite retro in a way now, Peanuts, but I adore them. And I think it's interesting because now thinking about it, when you said you were sort of listing some of the characters, I think the slight quirkiness of all these of the characters sort of chimes in with the other thing that always grabs my attention is in the sort of it's a very broad thing, but people just in I love people watching. If I see a sort of unusual character or somebody on the street doing something, I'm forever making up little stories in my head about what people are doing. I've been caught out before on the London Tube because I don't always realise that I'm looking at somebody, because I kind of start to look and I just find it really fascinating. And I have been told before, what are you staring at? So I have to be very careful because I do just kind of go, oh look, oh, that's amazing, and I think, and that probably again comes from maybe being an actor, or maybe I am an actor because I'm interested in people and how they behave.
In fact, Rudy Shelley, the acting teacher at the Bristol-based Theatre School, who used to always say, Ducky, because all actors are called Ducky, an actor should never be bored. There is always people to watch. Yeah. And so people watching is what actors do. Yeah. And also, in my life, loving Laurel and Hardy, I was really struck with Oliver Hardy's background is that he grew up in a Texas hotel. His parents owned it, and he used to just sit in the foyer people watching and banking characters for future life, so actors and people watching, I find that really relatable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they're my two things that grab my attention.
Okay, now one quirky or unusual fact about you, Kirsty Cox, we couldn't possibly know until you tell us.
I have repaired cleats on St Kilda. Now, there's a poster in the background here. For people who don't know, St Kilda is the most remote part of the British Isles, and it's 100 miles off the coast of Scotland. So really next stop America. You're there. They're 40 miles from the Outer Hebrides. So you've got Scotland, then the Outer Hebrides, then St Kilda, in the middle of the Atlantic. And they were inhabited as a group of islands. There's one island that was inhabited until about 1930. And then it was evacuated, and I was lucky enough, when would it have been, 3 years ago now, to go to St Kilda and stayed there for 2 weeks with 10 other people in splendid isolation and repaired cleats, which are these, amongst other jobs, but we were sort of a work party for the National Trust for Scotland. But cleats are these sort of like little stone sheds, but they have turf roofs. So I had to repair the turf on the cleats, but amongst other jobs. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's probably something that not a lot of people know. Is that I have spent time on the most remote part of the British Isles out of choice, which isn't everybody's cup of tea.
I absolutely love that. And thank you for clarifying what repairing cleats is. The most romantic idea of isolation. I love that. Wonderful tree shakeage, Kirsty Cox. Now, we move away from the tree, but we stay in the clearing, and we talk about alchemy and gold now. And you're giving me that by the bucket load anyway. But when you're at purpose and in flow, Kirsty Cox, what is it you most enjoy doing? When are you at your happiest?
I think this last year has proven to me, which I probably knew about myself anyway, but I am happiest when I am working with other people, collaborating as part of an ensemble, and being with, working with people that inspire me, and just, for want of a better word, playing, in a room, whether that's a rehearsal room, or, doing development work, or on stage with Instant Wit, or, but I struggle to be creative on my own. I am definitely an ensemble person, a collaborator. I like helping other people with their ideas. I don't often come up with the creative idea myself, but if somebody else has something, I'll go, oh, what about this? What about that? What about, and that, that's where I'm happiest, definitely. Yeah.
That's such a lovely answer too. You are a collaborator and a galvanizer of others. I love that. Very nice. Okay, now then, we're going to award you with a cake. You're gracing us with your presence here in the Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes, in the clearing. And the cake is multi-layered and open to interpretation, as are all the metaphors, with the invitation to go deep. Stuff like a favourite inspirational quote. What advice might you offer to a younger version of yourself, Kirsty Cox? And then here's the really lovely, delicious thing to get all existential as well. Inspired by Shakespeare and all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. How, when all is said and done, Kirsty Cox, would you most like to be remembered?
Ooh.
So you can talk about legacy as well. Over to you.
Wow. It was interesting because when I started sort of wondering about this, I thought, the thing that kept coming to mind was quotes, and I realized I love a good quote. And then I realized that virtually all of the quotes that I think about regularly are all Scottish. So I thought, there was one that my granny used to say, but is definitely a Scottish quote in general, which is "What's for you'll no go by you." So what's for you won't go by you. What will be. And I think about that a lot. That sort of feeling of.
I'll just say it again in that wonderful Scottish twang.
What's for you'll no go by you.
I love that. And there is it links beautifully to what's meant for you won't pass you by, which is something I say quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, and it's the same phrase.
Yeah.
And it just, times when you're thinking, well, why is this not happening? And I think, well, if it's meant to be, it will be, and that, because I am a bit of a worrier. So things like that just help me to kind of go, okay, it'll be all right. Things will be okay. There's a lovely quote by Robert Louis Stevenson that I have up above my desk. And that's, don't judge each day by the harvest that you reap, but by the seeds that you plant.
Oh. And
that one I just love, because I think that's also, especially I think creatively, we don't, sometimes at the end of the day, like I quite enjoy sometimes when I'm doing a bit of DIY or something, because you go, look, I painted that today, look at that, look what I achieved. Sometimes working creatively, you can't quite at the end of the day put your finger on what you've done, apart from being starting to create a piece of work, or being there with other people, and I think that idea of that you sow the seeds and at some point there will be the harvest, but it's not. Yes. It's not going to be every day that you're going to see tangible results. And I think
and just repeat that lovely quote again about this, the reaping.
Don't judge each day by the harvest that you reap, but by the seeds that you plant. I think I've just paraphrased. I mean, it is Robert Louis Stevenson. So, but he's probably wrote it slightly more eloquently, but it's that.
And when all is said and done, inspired now by a bit of cheeky Shakespeare, now legacy, how would you most like to be remembered, Kirsty Cox?
I think, it's really hard. I think as somebody that cared, as somebody that I don't know, that that's somebody that people liked, but then you don't want to say that. That's like then it's all about other people. But I think as somebody that was a good friend and a good somebody who sort of cared and loved and was loved, and I think that.
Wonderful. Where can we find out more about you on the internet? This is where you can talk, go as deep as you like on your own URLs, madam.
And this is the bit that I'm terrible at. networking or selling myself. I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Instagram or anything like that, so I don't have any social media things, but I do have my website that you obviously visited before, which is www.kirstycoxactor.co.uk. Yeah, and other than that, I don't know, look out for shows that I might be in. I'm doing stuff with New Old Friends later in the year at the Theatre Royal in Bath, and various other projects. So yeah.
So Kirsty Cox, it's been an absolute delight and a pleasure talking to you here on Your Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes, here on UK Health Radio and in the Good Listening To podcast space as well. So UK Health Radio, the feel good radio show, and do look up Kirsty Cox, actress. It's at actor.com, isn't it? But anyway, thank you so much. So until next week, if you want to come back into this space to hear more stories from the clearing, I've been Chris Grimes. That has been Kirsty Cox. This has been Your Life and Times with me, Chris Grimes, and good night.